all of your standard high-profile guys that everybody knows, you know, the Ted Bundys, the John Wayne Gacy's, Jeffrey Dahmers, Hillside Stranglers, and those led me to various other cases, and ended up researching, I don't know, some 3 dozen or so, or maybe more, individual quote-unquote serial killer cases, and I found these same sort of common threads running through each of the stories. And what I began to realize is that there was a completely different way of looking at this whole serial killer phenomenon than the way that we are conditioned to look at these people.
Every time Dad came home from work, he'd always go straight into the kitchen where Mum usually was, and just put his hand up her skirt and just in front of us, and it was like embarrassing. We'd look away. He would just sort of all the time just be touching her and groping her all the time, and he'd do it every single day, no matter who was in the house, whether we had any friends there or anything. Dad wanted Mum to be with other men and women and whatever. And there were microphones in every room of the house, hidden. We knew they were there, but Dad used them to listen to everything that was going on in the house. There was microphones in Mum's bedrooms, and they were hidden, artexed into the ceiling, and they were for listening to the men she was with, and they were hidden for the purpose so they could not see them. But the other ones, which were in all the children's bedrooms and in the basement, Dad would then take the receiver to bed with him and listen to us at night.
At night, if Mum had someone with her, he used to sit with it to his ear, but so on the maximum volume, and we used to hear it, so we used to turn the telly up.
He said one stage to Mum that the only thing that he could ever get to satisfy her was a ball, and he was just fascinated with sort of getting her to sleep with sort of an animal. Dad always said that Mum, he was never good enough for Mum, and that she needed someone else, and that he would provide them for her. And he obviously got some sex enjoyment from watching her.
Olive had formed an intense relationship with Sutcliffe, which came to dominate her life. It began more than 20 years earlier when she became convinced that Sutcliffe had come to her workplace with the notorious hoaxer.
I worked in this canteen in 1978, and that summer 2 men would come in regularly. One, tallish, black head, quite nice looking. The other one, a little fat man. They would sit here, always, together. The dark man, very, very nice, polite, quiet, nicely spoken, told me about his house in Bradford, a lorry driver, his wife was a teacher, even told me how much his house cost.
When Sutcliffe was arrested and his photo appeared in the paper, Olive was certain it was the same man who had visited her canteen.
I couldn't believe he could be the Yorkshire Ripper. When I read in the paper all the details, what she had told me, and I saw the photograph, it had to be him. Then I remembered his companion with a lisp. He had a Sunderland accent. I felt sure he was the hoaxer who sent the letters and put the police on another trail.
I reckon your boys are letting you down, George. They can't be much good, can they? You are no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started.
Olive was convinced that the Sunderland man responsible for the hoax letters and tape was Sutcliffe's accomplice, and they'd drunk tea together in her canteen that summer. She went to the police with her claims.
The accomplice theory has some credibility because of the nature of some of the crimes. Peter Sutcliffe has always been adamant that he was alone. My own view is that there were, in certain cases, other people involved. One of the leads, particularly the Geordie accent and the north-east nature of many of the issues, relate to sightings and belief that he was seen in a cafe, and Olive raised this, and I spoke with her about it. And we actually pursued that without any success.
Myra Hindley has been told by the Home Office she's to spend the rest of her life in prison. Hindley, who was jailed in 1966, is said to be deeply shocked because she thought she had atoned for her crimes. But the mother of one of the victims said she was overjoyed.
Myra Hindley was called to the Governor's office at Cookham Wood and given a letter from the prison service. After a House of Lords ruling last year, she and all other life prisoners have to be told the minimum period they must serve before being considered for parole. Hindley, who's 52 and who's been in jail since 1966, now knows that for her, a life sentence will mean exactly that.
News like that, when broken to anyone, such devastating news that you must never hope for your freedom, takes a long time to sink in. And indeed, when I saw her this morning, I was struck how I think bewildered she was, and slowly coming to terms with that news.
Few crimes have caused the outrage and revulsion of the Moors murders, and the tabloid newspapers have ensured that the images of the 60s hadn't been allowed to fade away. Hindley, who lured children to their deaths at the hands of her lover, Ian Brady. A tape recording of one of their victims, Leslie Ann Downey, was played at the trial, another feature which marked the case as unlike any other. 20 years into her sentence, Myra Hindley was taken back to Saddleworth Moor, near Manchester, to help the police find the bodies of 2 more of the victims. But if that was an attempt on her part to win early release, it failed. In 1990, the then Home Secretary, David Waddington, decided she must stay in prison for the whole of her life, and it seems unlikely any future Home Secretary will take a different view. For Leslie Ann Downey's mother and the families of the other victims, today's confirmation of the Home Office position was welcome news.
I was overjoyed, I cried with joy. I hugged my husband, and I got hold of Lester's portrait, and I said, I told you, darling, we'd never let her. I think she deserves all she gets, that monster. And more, and more.
Myra Hindley can appeal to the Home Office, but now knows that this prison is where she may well end her days. Neil Bennett, BBC News.
From ID, a podcast about Dean Corll the Candyman, John Wayne Gacy the Killer Clown, and their links to a massive sex trafficking ring.
This is a story with no redemption. Everyone who's been involved in this case cannot let it go.
My name is Jacqueline Bynan. I'm a true crime journalist and television producer, and for 2 years I've been investigating a network of predators. The crimes of America's infamous money man Jeffrey Epstein are nothing new. He was following a well-worn path that has its roots in the 1970s. Predators hiding in plain sight, and they were hunting not girls, but boys.
I would call it a pedophile cell, and I think it could be compared to a terrorist cell.
This was a pond of perversity.
What we uncover is a tale of secrets, cover-ups, and real-life conspiracies. These guys all followed the same playbook.
They came from all walks of life, lawyers and doctors and civil servants.
People like you and I would have been in jail a long time ago.
These sons of bitches are hiding under rocks, and our governments are keeping the rocks on top of them.
But nothing stays hidden forever. You'll hear a side of the 70s you never suspected from the people who were there, including the secret conversations of one of America's most prolific killers.
You have a collect call from
John Gacy.
The Clown and the Candyman. A new 8-part podcast from ID, launching December 15th. Subscribe now at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.